The Lighthouse could have gone wrong. Wrong how? Ascertaining what it takes to be acclaimed and adored on film Twitter, Letterboxd, Reddit, predictable and pandering. Rather, The Lighthouse is, at least cinematographically, original and radiant. I am tempted to heap more praise upon cinematographer Jaron Blaschke than director and co-writer, with his brother Max, Robert Eggers. Narratively, The Lighthouse is a pastiche of horror short fiction, and its conversions onto screen, such as Whistle and I'll Come to You, The Innocents, or Venus of Isle, yet also a nod to the surrealist or art house experimental wing of cinematographic expressionism, Meshes of the Afternoon, Persona, Eraserhead. Perhaps the most overt appeal is to the silent era, or especially, the 1930s. Eggers' enthusiasm for Murnau's Nosferatu is apparent, and hopefully will see great fruition in the rather near future, although Dreyer's Vampire hovers over the proceedings more so, particularly where the editing schema is concerned. Rather than pandering to folk horror fetishism, mindfuck, wank, or even slow cinema homage, The Lighthouse is an amalgamation of the long-observed appeal of the spooky place horror story, plus a vision into how current feature film technology is unfolding further possibilities to both tell these stories, rearrange these stories, and also invoke new ones, and new ways of telling stories, new kinds of stories. The Lighthouse feels as though it could be a channel for subgenres and styles, much as the 20th century horror genre classics such as Caligari, Nosferatu, Vampire, Frankenstein, Freaks, Psycho, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Exorcist, Halloween, Hellraiser, Begotten, or David Lynch in general, might have done. It doesn't even attempt to nod in the direction of the elevated horror charade, wherein hack amateurism such as The Babadook, Get Out, and Hereditary are lauded for obvious and widely agreed upon social politics. It is considered elevated horror, potentially, by that crowd, although the capabilities present within the Lighthouse imply several different directions with which inspirations can utilize the film's toolkit. It doesn't rely on overly familiar imagery, folk horror invoking Witchfinder General, Blood on Satan's Claw, and Wicker Man basically ad nauseum. It doesn't rely on simply mining Eraserhead. It further reminds one of Persona, for what that's worth. It's interested in captivating its filmmakers rather than the swarm drones of contemptible Redditors, and isn't interested in displaying any social signals for clout either. No ego or want for recognition is overt, except maybe from the most ardent and unmoving of European art film critics. Hence the emphasis on Dreyer, Bergman, Darren, or, the great horror film pioneers, say Zestrom or Murnau or Robert Wien or Turner even, or Whale or Dreyer or Browning or Christensen. They weren't interested in evoking old horror films. Actually, even less in impressing critics. They wouldn't be. They wanted to compose new visions, the most valid realizations of the horror fiction pathology yet available to the public, and The Lighthouse isn't quite as secure about blocking its ears to potential critical snobbery, and so homages overly so for my very particular preference, although the ratio is still in its favor, and it certainly seeks to want to find new avenues of horror filmmaking storytelling, even if it does attempt to root itself too much in cinematic sacred cows, Vampire, Persona, even the lauded recent, if 2011 is still recent, I'll hope, 2 Years at Sea from Ben Rivers was surely seen by Eggers, or may as well he have. It does attempt to root itself too much in cinematic sacred cows, as I said, in feeling inspired by them, it latches onto some degree of the pathological originality which was required of those legendary works. The Lighthouse is receiving a very thorough endorsement from AOD, not that it needed one. I held off seeing this because it looked too much like what I'd enjoy, and I don't like being pandered to, although it was 30% total pandering at the max, and the rest of it was a kind of a sheen, aesthetic and conviction I wasn't prepared for and didn't know I would especially want. I'm rather envious. Congratulations to the Eggers brothers and Jaron Blaschke. Those brothers had better be treating you very well. Blaschke, who also shot 2015's highly commendable, also The Witch from Eggers, and 2022's The Northman, yet to be seen by me. Blaschke is the factor, I will strongly suspect. I'm glad I waited. Very tremendous work, so very impressed indeed.